There is a ton of excitement brewing in the Tesla community on X. You can feel it. Bradford Ferguson has managed to get his hands on version 12.3 a couple of times during his cross-country ride now, and he has just been going on and on about how great version 12.3 is. Now Chuck Cook has made his first post with a video coming soon, and here's what Chuck had to say. OMG, 40 minutes of a first impression drive, and I threw everything at FSD beta version 12.3. No disengagements, one small intervention that I probably was just being a defensive driver. Video, as soon as I can get it all downloaded and rendered, will probably be this afternoon. Wow, is all I can say. Nice work, Tesla AI team. Well, there you go. Chuck Cook, he's pretty level-headed. He's pretty, he doesn't hyperbolize very much, and he's pretty darned exciting. So this is not investment advice, but I wouldn't want to be out of Tesla when FSD becomes complete or when everybody believes it's complete. And that could be tomorrow, or it can be next week, or it could be in a month. But it looks to me like it's getting super, super close. So FSD-equipped vehicles are robots, right? But there's this other robot, and Optimus could have a similar, probably a much greater impact on Tesla stock than FSD, and it could happen at any time. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe in a month, maybe in a few months. Well, this morning, there's already been multiple articles about robots that are seemingly already at work in factories. Maybe, it seems like it, or at least nearly there. The articles are not 100% clear. Here was one regarding Mercedes. This is a Mercedes press release. The newest Mercedes-Benz production worker is 5'8", 160 pounds, can lift 55 pounds, and plugs itself in when it needs to take a break. Eptronic, a humanoid robot manufacturer based in Austin, Texas, has won a contract to supply its Apollo humanoid robots for the car maker's production line. Why it matters? Well, first-generation humanoid robots are storming into real-life industrial settings, making the leap from science fiction to the factory floor. Now, that seems really clear, doesn't it? It's not quite clear because it doesn't actually say there's 10 or 100 or how many already there, but it says driving the news, Mercedes-Benz is exploring potential use cases for Apollo humanoid robots and logistics, according to the company's announcement. Now that says exploring. That's not the same as deploying. So that's why it gets a little confusing. The robot will bring parts to the production line for workers to assemble and impact components. And inspect components. Now, inspection is something which is so obvious for these bots to do. We were always thinking about how could we get some cameras lined up to take pictures of the products as they were going by so that we would be able to just reject them immediately rather than have them maybe get by and maybe get in the hands of consumers. Later, it will deliver totes of kitted parts for use in the manufacturing process. Well, what they're saying, long-term, really the sky's the limit in terms of what these types of systems will be able to do. Eptronic CEO Jeff Cardenas told Axios last year. By the way, that was Axios reporting on the Mercedes-Benz printout or press release. Now they say zoom out. The announcement is the latest big news from the small cadre of companies that make walking, dexterous, human-shaped robots. Robots from Figure are joining BMW's manufacturing plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Agility Robots has deployed its robot Digit at an Amazon facility. We know that's to be true, actually working already, and a Spanx distribution center, and just released software to control an army of bots. So just like you have software that controls an army of drones, now you'll have one piece of software where you can control a bunch of bots. Uptronic also has a partnership with NASA to accelerate the commercialization of Apollo. Now they say between the lines, there's ambient concern that robots might replace humans in jobs. Apollo was meant to automate some physically demanding, repetitive, and dull tasks for which it is increasingly hard to find reliable workers, said Mercedes and Uptronic in their press release. Well, yeah, that's what they say. What are they going to say? Yeah, it's going to wipe out all. Well, that's actually what Elon said. It's going to take over all jobs. I don't think it's going to take over all jobs, and I think new jobs will be created. That's a video for another day. And in fact, we've already done that video at least twice. And we'll probably talk about it in the future, but we've seen the story before. Lots and lots of email alone wiped out the entire secretarial force. Okay, so this is not a new thing. We've seen this. We've seen this story many times before. Okay, let's take a look though. Let's take a look at Optimus again, price-wise. We're going to look at it a couple different ways, but you know, some of these bot companies are talking about selling the bots. So let's take a look. We've been saying that Tesla would be stupid to sell them. I still say everybody's stupid to sell them. You need to lease them by the hour, by the day, by the month, or by the year, but it should be leased. And probably in the early days, the manufacturer should be responsible for replacing parts and stuff like that. There's all kinds of ways you could do this. There's a million different setups that could be used, but I think we do need to look at the opportunity, the dollar volume kinds of numbers, the profit numbers, at least from two different ways. One is the leased by month or leased by year approach, and the other is the outright sale. So it does appear that some companies are already selling humanoid bots in a range of between $60,000 and $250,000. Now, clearly, if that turns out to be the right price for a fully functioning humanoid robot capable of doing a wide range of useful tasks in factories for only $60, the demand will be off the charts. It won't be a few. It'll be millions and millions and millions of people that'll be lined up for that bot. But the problem will be, just like we have seen with Cybertruck, I mean, right now, the $60,000 or $80,000 Cybertruck, they can get it all, they can sell it all day for $120,000. And until they run out of people willing to pay $120,000, they're not going to lower their price to $100,000. And when that, then they'll, you know, eventually, maybe by this time next year or so, I'll be able to get my $60,000 Cybertruck that I've been in line for. Maybe you too. Maybe you'll get yours as well. But the same thing's going to happen with the bots, because otherwise, if Tesla had come out with a $60,000 Cybertruck from the very get-go, those would have all been grabbed up by people that would just turn right around and resell them. In fact, people are buying them for $120,000, and those guys are still reselling them. So that's what would happen with the bots. And the situation will be much more rabid than the situation you're in now, because you're talking about manufacturers who can save money day in and day out, and manufacturers like to do that. Distribution centers like to do that. Wholesalers like to do that. Retailers like to do. Everybody wants to save money, and they certainly want to do that when you got a labor shortage like we have right now. And even if there was no labor shortage, I loved my employees. I think about my the employees I used to have working for me all the time, all the friends, all the people that I saw grow up in my company over 30 years. You know, some of them came to work for me when they were 18 years old, and they were, you know, when I sold the company, they were in their 40s. It was great. It's like having 500, like having 100 grandkids. Okay. So, the problem is, you know, you might love them, but you don't like what goes with it. You don't like the folks that don't show up on time. You don't like the folks that all of a sudden decide they're going to take a vacation without telling you. You don't like the folks that come in and somebody gives them a better job, and now you've got to rehire in that position. You don't like the folks that are squabbling or causing problems on the floor. You don't like the folks that are slower than the one that's next to them. Anyway, we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. Well, anyway, let's just consider the value again. As a manufacturer or at a distribution center, retailer, how would I figure out the value? Well, number one, you've got the hourly cost. That's the simple thing. Today, let's say that would be a minimum of $15. Sure, the federal minimum pay is $7.50. And if you live in some parts of Kentucky, maybe there's somebody you can hire for $7.50 an hour. I doubt it. Okay. And I'm not knocking Kentucky. I'm just saying there's nobody in California at 750. Well, first of all, we have a different minimum wage in California. But if you're in a state that still has the federal minimum wage and no state minimum wage law that's higher, and you're in a really low cost of living place, maybe you can get somebody for $7.50 an hour. So, but really, the cost, the minimum wage in America today is $15 an hour. Okay, so $15 an hour is a minimum. I would say these bots right now, there are jobs they can do that you would need to pay $40 an hour. And you'd pay $40 an hour because maybe it's in a cold environment, a super hot environment, just some other kind of miserable aspect to it. You're always getting your hands in the grease. Or I was a printer for years, and your hands are, your hands are always had printer's ink. There was no way you could get rid of it. You could do all you wanted to. You could try all you wanted. You're going to go home, and even by Monday morning after weekend, you still had black in your pores. So there's a million jobs like that are not that desirable. And those people sometimes are getting paid $40 an hour for fairly simple tasks. So I'll put a cap of $40 an hour in terms of what these bots might make. Now you have to add the 35%. That's the obvious part. The company's portion of the Social Security, probably some kind of days off, might be some pension plans. There's all kinds of things. But right now, everybody seems to agree on the 35% bump that it's costing you for that employee over and above their labor. So now you're talking about $20 to $55 an hour. Now, CERM Basher and I produced a long list of additional benefits, some of which I was kind of just talking about a minute. The hiring, the training, the motivation, the savings in the HR department, the savings of having supervisors. You wouldn't need as many supervisors. You are the ease of making, it's just, there's so many different things that are going to make these numbers. Well, we kind of came up, we thought maybe it would double these numbers. Okay. So you'd be talking about, instead of 55, instead of 40, $20 an hour, $55 an hour, you'd be talking about $40 an hour to $110 an hour. But we'll come back to that in a second. Let's stick with just the basic, what I pay plus the 35%. If I employ that bot for 40 hours, 52 weeks, the range of hourly savings to replace that human being would be from $40,000 to $110,000 a year. By the way, you may not know, you just double the $40 an hour becomes $880,000 a year. You just double it and add a couple of zeros, because roughly people work 2,000 hours a year. We can assume without hesitation that just as you're currently seeing on the Cybertruck, the first few years of production will be going to the highest bidders. So high bidders will be those who fit the following description in terms of businesses. Number one, they have the highest paid position that the bots can do. Okay, those were the things that we just talked about a minute ago. They might be dangerous. They might be third shift. They might be all kinds of reasons why you pay extra. Number two, they have the greatest headache finding qualified workers who will show up and stay in the job. So they're just frustrated. They need to get somebody, well, in this case, they know it's going to stay. Number three, they have multiple shifts where the value would be 2 times or 3 times or 4 times the 40 to 110,000 we just talked about, right? If you have 2 shifts, all of a sudden that bot is worth 80,000 or 220,000, possibly as much as 440,000 a year if you've got 4 shifts. You know what 4 shifts are, right? That's your regular 3 shifts, 5 days a week, and then 2 full shifts on the weekend. It doesn't necessarily work out exactly that way, but it adds up to 4 shifts. And so you could have the $110,000 one is all of a sudden worth 440,000. Well, okay, then you have number 4, understanding the idea that the savings are way greater than the hourly, which I just said might double it. So now your 440,000 guys worth $880,000. So again, just try to think of the owner of a company that is running 4 shifts, like SpaceX, I think, is running 4 shifts, like some of the Tesla factories are working 4 shifts. It's not unusual to have 4 shifts, to be working 24/7. So all of a sudden you're a factory owner and you've got that situation. You can get 1 bot, maybe you need 2, but let's say you have 1 bot working all 4 shifts, and it's worth $880,000 a year to you. Or it's even, take it in half, just use the hourly. It's worth $440,000 a year. Okay, let's have it again. It's worth $220,000. Okay, have it again. It's worth $110,000 a year for you. Do you get where I'm coming from? That's what the value is. And I'm talking to you as somebody who was in manufacturing and distribution for 40 something years before I became a consultant. In the last 15, 16 years, I've been a consultant working with what? Manufacturers, distributors, retailers, a lot of service businesses too, but these folks, okay? So I know what it costs and I know how you figure out when you're going to go out and buy something that's going to automate some department. You realize, of course, in the services business, you got all this automation too. It's called computers. It's called ChatGPT. I mean, it's all, everybody's going through this, but we're now talking about humanoid bots, at least for this session. So I'll maintain that the middle number is 60,000 a year to rent. Okay, that's the rent. 60,000 minimum. There's no way it's ever going to be less. I don't think it'll ever be. I don't think 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it'll be less than 60,000. That's why I keep saying all these companies should rent them. Because otherwise, let's say you sell it for 100,000, wouldn't you rather rent it for 3 years for 60,000 a year than sell it for 100,000? Okay, maybe you could sell it for 180,000. Okay, maybe you'd rather have the cash in hand. That makes sense. But people that are selling them now for 60,000 are selling them for 100,000 or 125,000? Now, okay, right now that sale might be going into a lab where the lab is going to be doing some stuff that's going to help both of you long term. And I started recommending that. I think that would have been 9 months ago where I started talking about if Tesla was to start putting these in factories other than their own, they would take applications and they would put them, they would rent them or how are they going to do it into those factories that are going to help Tesla learn more about the bot in a real working situation. Then everybody wins and there's, a real benefit to that. And that's what I started recommending. I think probably 9 months ago, Scott and I did some videos on that. Okay. Oops. Okay. Alternatively, the cost of purchase, let's call it 200,000. Even though we're estimating the cost to build the bot will be no more than 40,000 and probably more in the range of 6,000 to 10,000. So how would you like to have a business where you could build something for $40,000 and sell it for 200,000? Yeah. Well, that's actually the business. If you want to sell products into Amazon, that's what it has to be. Your landed cost, I pay landed cost items that the item cost me $5. I have to sell it on Amazon for 25. Why? Advertising, freight, what Amazon charges me, managing the shipments, et cetera, et cetera. I have to do it 5 times. So it's not so unusual, except when it costs 40,000 and you're selling it for 200,000. That never happens, okay? Those margins never happen on things that cost that much. But let's just say that that's what the deal is. That would be a very good deal, believe me. All right. I think it's going to be more like the bot costs 10, maybe. And Tesla, if they were going to sell them, hopefully doesn't sell them for a nickel less than 200,000. So it's a even much better deal. The margins are just nuts. All right. So we're hearing the cost, as I said, from 6,000 to 40,000 to build, but Elon said they would sell for less than cars. I'm going to take Elon at his word on this. Maybe, again, in the early days, if they sell them, they're going to sell them for a couple $100,000, but he's saying eventually they'll sell for less than cars. So that would be $30,000 maximum, right? Less than cars. Okay, less than current cars. Maybe he was talking about less than the new Gen 3 car. So we'd be talking 20,000, but let's say 30,000 for now. Apply a 30% margin to that. So you make $9,000 per bot. There would not, for this experiment, we're not going to talk about the overhead portion of this because I think the overhead is going to be so tiny anyway, but let's just leave that out for now. Yes, you could have customer service, you could have repairs, et cetera, but who knows who bears those responsibilities? Maybe the customer is still paying some monthly fee for customer service. Maybe the customer, which happens all the time, right? You buy a printer and you get a customer service, contract. You buy a computer and you pay Apple every month, for your customer service arrangement. Okay, so nobody doubts. Nobody that I've talked to, not Joe Justice, not Scott Walter, not anybody that knows anything about manufacturing, doubts that when this starts ramping, the ramp will be way faster than cars. Different products ramp at different rates, okay? Cars take a lot of time because they got to be perfect. They can't run into people. They can't have brake failure. There's so many things they can't do. Bicycle water bottles, I can ramp from 1 to 5 million a year in a year, okay? Some injection molded part, I can ramp from 1 to 20 million in a year, easy. No big deal. So different products take different amounts of time to ramp. The bot's going to be somewhere in the middle. If they start producing bots next year at Tesla and they produce a few tens of thousands next year to get it started, they can easily make $1 million in 2026. Slam dunk, probably more, but easily $1 million. Not going to be hard. Nobody thinks it'll be a problem. So let's say you're making $9,000 a piece on those because you decide to stupidly sell them for $30,000 a piece and they cost you 10. I'm sorry, did I say 10 to 21? Okay, 21. You're selling them for 30. So you make that's $9 billion in profit. That's $9 billion the second year, basically, in profit. Yeah, 9 billion. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then you can see no matter how you produce, no matter what way you do this, whether you rent them or sell them, the numbers get huge really fast. Those same 1 million bots, if you actually rent them out at $60,000 a year, like I'm suggesting, that's a $60 billion profit in that first year. Again, assuming there's going to be, we're really just back of the napkin. Yes, there might be costs associated with that 60,000, but maybe you charge 70 and the costs are 10. So we net it out to 60. I'm just trying to get a number out there that makes sense. So maybe you got a $60 billion profit. Well, in that scenario, you only need to make 2 million of them and you're at Apple profits. Well, okay, let me say that again. If you make 2 million bots and sell them and rent them for $60,000 a year, even if it's a $50,000 profit a year, that's $100 billion in profits, which is where Apple is. 2 million. That's all it takes. Okay. I know it's crazy. I mean, it's 2 million bots. That's how many cars Tesla makes now. If they were bots instead of cars and you could rent them for $60,000, which I think I've just proven you can, then it's a $100 million profit. Okay. Okay. And then if you want to sell them for $200,000 a piece, and let's say that's, well, let's just say it's a $100,000 profit, $100,000 profit. Then if you make 10 million of them, you've got, oh, I'm sorry, that's not true. If you sell 100,000, yeah, you're back to having that $100 billion profit, the same as Apple, if you just sell 1 million of those a year, if you have $100,000 profit on each one. Now, you don't get the profit the next year. Remember, that's the problem. Okay, anyway, but Randy, there you go again with these crazy numbers. Gary Black asked you to show him a list of all these jobs that these bots can do and how many workers it would displace. Well, I've done that work before. I've done at least 2 videos on this in the past, and I've done multiple other videos where I've just talked about kind of exactly how it would have worked in my factory, okay, with the bot sitting in front of a blow molder and just watching the bottles come out, picking them up and putting them into a trimmer. That's what was called a trimmer, which trimmed off the top. And then you take your hand down to the bottom and you take off a tab on the bottom. These are the unusable parts. And then the bottle goes into a box. After it goes through the trimmer, the bottle falls off into a box. The bot could do that right now. Believe me, it wouldn't be that hard. The bots we've seen could do that job. Okay. And I've done a bunch of videos in that. I did a big, huge video one time on how the bot would work out in a production silk screen shop for t-shirts. And everybody saw the video. It was one of my top videos ever. And everybody that watched it goes, yeah, that bot that we're looking at right now, that can pick the t-shirt up and put it over here and pick the t-shirt up and put it over here. What's the big deal? So anyway, I'm just going to give you a few things here. Number 1, warehouse pick and place. That's what everybody's been talking about. You pick up the product, you take it over and you put it on the shelf, or you pick it up over here and you put it over there, or you take it off the shelf and you put it into a box. Pick and place, easy stuff. Feeding the box taper. You pick up the box, you fold the top, the lids in, and you push it through the taper. It's a job that thousands of people have to do that. Warehouse pick and place, huge numbers of people do that job. The box taper, lots and lots of people have to do that job. Placing finished products into packages of all kinds. Putting the product, taking a product up, picking it up, and putting it into a box or into a skin card on top of a skin card, or putting it into a blister, and then it goes for, or into a tray, and then the skin card goes over with all the parts on it and goes into a skin machine that pulls the plastic over it and sucks it down. And then, or it goes, the ones that go into the blister packs, those go over and they get the blister card applied to them, and a machine comes down and puts that together. All those jobs, the tray goes into a box. Then the box, those boxes, those finished products, they go into boxes. That's called an inner pack, and those get sealed. And then the inner pack goes into a master pack, and those go through a taper. Okay. And then the master pack goes out and goes onto a pallet and goes out. All of those jobs are super simple, super boring, and can be done by the bots that you're looking at right now. Okay, then, okay, what about, I've mentioned silk screening. Again, multiple people in the silk screen department are doing jobs like I just mentioned. You pick up the t-shirt and you put it on a screen, and then you pull the just like when you're printing paper, it's the same thing on the bigger machines where you pull something down and then it prints, and then you put it up and you pick the t-shirt up, and maybe it goes under a dryer, maybe it doesn't, maybe it has another process, maybe it has to be folded. We've already seen folding t-shirts. Hundreds of thousands of people work in the positions that I'm talking about. What about, I mentioned before, blow molders, injection molders, extruders. You always have people that are in the input and the outtake on injection molders and blow molders and extruders. They pick the product up, they have to process it, and then it goes on to the next station. Sometimes that next station could also be done by the bot. Pad printing is another big business. Pad printing is exactly the same. You put the product onto the pad, you pull it prints, you take it off. And by the way, a lot of times on all of these positions, one of the really important things is QC. And again, the robot can QC way better, 100% better than a human can, way better for that. Anyway, all the jobs I just described, hundreds of thousands of people do these jobs just in the United States, much less Europe, Canada, other Western nations. Now you get into, maybe in Vietnam today, or in India or Cambodia, you might have these jobs that are, maybe they're only paying $2 an hour, $3 an hour. No, the bot isn't going to replace those people, at least not yet. Okay, maybe later, but maybe not yet. So it's going to be a higher level job that's going to be able to be taken over in some of those countries, or jobs that nobody wants to do. Oh, I should get into that. Should I spend some more time talking about the dirty labor concept? I think we've talked about that before, but in a lot of cases, what you see is, here's a 2-minute version of it. Okay, when I was little, Japan was doing all the dirty labor. Japan doesn't do any dirty labor anymore. They don't do labor where you get your hands dirty, okay? They took over the tech jobs, okay? And then it went to Taiwan. And so when I was a young man in business, we were buying all of our dirty products out of Taiwan. But then Taiwan got into semiconductors and high tech, and you can't get dirty jobs done there. So it went to South Korea. South Korea was doing all the dirty jobs, but they got higher tech than anybody. And so China started doing all the dirty jobs. And now pretty soon, China, they're not going to want to do the dirty jobs either. It's going to started about 10 years ago, going to Vietnam, Cambodia, and now it's going to India and Malaysia and Indonesia, and now to Africa. China's already down in Africa and in South America, looking for more places where these dirty jobs can get done. Well, pretty soon you can just run out. Everybody's going to be doing higher stuff, and so the bots will take over all of that. So that's the dirty job theory. All right. So as I mentioned, all of these jobs a day would pay between 15 and 25 an hour. Therefore, these would all, I have more of them, machine shops. Any of you guys ever worked at a machine shop? Well, I've had a lot of my friends in machine shops. I know a lot about machine shops. And yes, you got the same thing. You take the raw stock, you put the raw stock into the lathe, you turn on all you do is push a button, the lathe does the work, you take the part out, or maybe it drops out, you put it, now it's got to go over and it's got to go to deburring, or it's got to go to an acid wash, or it's got to go to hardening. And so all that is taking those boxes over and taking them over, putting them into the deburr machine and turning on it's not hard work, but it's nasty work. I can tell you that. Anyway, the most boring job I ever had was printing. We just talked about printing a minute ago. And I was a lithographic. I was working on lithographic machines, and those are pretty well gone. There's still some of them out there, but the current printers are no different. You take the paper, you put it in, a ream at a time, or maybe 10 reams at a time. You put it in, it prints, you get it out the other end, you put it in boxes. Or the other stupid, boring job I had in college, dishwashing in cafeterias. I, push those dishes, put the dishes in, dishwasher, you push it through, it comes out the other end, you unload the dishes. They were hot. It's not good. We just saw a figure loading a dish rack. Okay, I think I'm done. I think I've made my point. Within the next 12 months, within a year, by the time I turn 77, next year, a year from today, within that time, I think way, way sooner, this business, the robot business, the Optimus humanoid robot business will be a reality, to the point where the FOMO will be like no other business in history. Mark my words, like no other, the business will be like no other business in history. There is no bigger TAM than human labor, period. As Elon has said, I'm not making this up. This is Elon Musk. It's the biggest thing ever. And once people get it and they see that it's really going to happen at some point in that thing, the FOMO is going to be nuts. And this is not investment advice, but I don't know. Maybe you should be, I don't know. What am I saying? Okay. I think I want to let you know that earlier this morning, I did a second Gary Black video. This was not an actual interview with him, but it was some content that he sent me that I went over this morning on that video. It got terrible. Nobody watched it. What in the world? You guys, what's the problem? I thought you liked Gary Black. I thought you respected Gary Black. I had 2 people unsubscribe. Now, what's going on here? You need to look at that video. Valuable. He's a very, very smart and wise man. And whether you like some of the things he says or not, I've had lots of bosses. Well, no, I haven't had lots of bosses. I've had bankers and lawyers tell me things I didn't want to hear. Well, sometimes Gary is that banker or that lawyer, and he's telling you things you don't want to hear, but that you need to hear. Go back and look at that video. I'll put the card right here. And then later today, we'll have the news. Okay, so stay tuned. Make sure you hang out and get the notification that the news show for Saturday, where's the only place you're going to get the news, you get a chance to watch it. Okay, that's all I got. Been great. Talk to you later.